You're watching Canadian Muslim news on Muslim Network TV. From Toronto, Ontario, Assalamu alaikum and greetings of peace. I'm Catherine Bullock. Today, a conversation with Adar Abdulkadir, who is a research lead for the Islamic Family and Social Services Association based in Edmonton, about a new research project on Muslims in prison. But first, some news headlines. Annamie criticises Green Party leadership review. Religious affiliation in Canada, lowest since 1985. Book on Niqab-wearing women in Canada wins award. First Muslim Arab American elected as mayor in Michigan. And 23 killed as bus crashes into Ravine in Pakistan. According to the CBC, Green Party leader Annamie said that she was surprised by the party's decision to hold a vote on her leadership. Leadership reviews are typically held for party leaders that were not chosen as Prime Minister. Said that the leadership review was unnecessary, as she already announced her resignation. She now awaits her lawyer and the party to discuss the terms of her departure. Former Green Party leader Jim Harris says that must be removed in order to start rebuilding the party. Statistics Canada released data showing that religious affiliation for Canadians, collectively and individually, has declined within the past few decades. In 1985, 90% of people said that they were affiliated with a religion. In 2019, this number declined to 68%. Statistics Canada said that this decline is most likely due to differences between younger and older religious practitioners. Young Canadians are less likely to be religiously affiliated and are less likely to participate in religious or spiritual activities. The Ottawa Historical Society has given University of Ottawa law professor Natasha Bakht the Huguenot Society of Canada Award for her book, In Your Face, Law, Justice and Niqab-Wearing Women in Canada. The award is given for books that were recently published and concern freedom of conscience and thought. In her book, she looked at the social, legal, and political barriers Muslim women encounter because of their face veil. Bakht wanted to eliminate negative stereotypes of niqab-wearing Muslim women, especially at a time where Quebec's Bill 21 is in effect. According to the Canadian Lawyers magazine, she likens Bill 21 to political swine flu that has swept Western countries. Abdullah has been elected as mayor of Dearborn, Michigan, with 55% of the vote. Hamoud replaced John O'Reilly, who was mayor for 14 years. In his victory speech, Hamoud said that he stood as a reminder that people of different faiths and languages were still as American as anyone else. Hamoud's campaign advocated for improving infrastructure with a strong focus on economic recovery coming out of the pandemic. According to Detroit News, voters were also impressed with Hamoud's plan to tackle frequent flooding and investing in renewable energy. And at least 23 people were killed and another 8 injured when a passenger bus fell into a ravine in Pakistan-administered Kashmir, police and local media reported. The incident occurred in the Sudnoti district of the Pakistan-controlled part of the disputed Himalayan Valley. Rashid Naeem Khan, a senior police official, told reporters that 21 bodies were recovered, while those that were injured, some of them critically, were transported to the hospital. Road accidents in this region are common, mainly due to the hilly terrain and non-compliance with safety standards. That's it for the news, and now our interview with Adar Abdulkadir. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the show, Adar.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you?
I'm fine, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Doing pretty well, thanks.
The Islamic Family and Social Services Association, which is based in Edmonton, is starting out on a new project looking at Muslims in the prison system. And I'm fairly sure that most of our audience doesn't know almost anything about that. So could you just start out with telling us very briefly a little bit about Muslims in prisons in Canada?
Yes, I can. So between 2014 and 2018 in Canada, the population of Muslims in prison rose by 20%. So Muslims are now the second largest faith group in prisons. They represent 6.6% of Canada's prison population, but less than 3% of the general population, according to Stats Canada. So this project is essentially, it's looking to understand the needs of our incarcerated brothers and sisters, and also best practices and best ways forward to provide effective services.
Do we have any idea what accounts for that increase? Is it racial profiling, or Muslims are committing more crimes, or people in prison are converting to Islam?
So there's no hard evidence to indicate the cause of this increase, but I would speculate, many of the things that you listed. So racial profiling, a lot of Muslims in Canada, of course, are racialized peoples. Racial profiling, maybe issues in the community as well. So there's not, I don't want to offer a concrete reason as to why, just because the data doesn't point to anything specific. But it's something that we're really interested in finding out as well.
Will you be interviewing prisoners as part of the research?
So our one stipulation is that we can't speak with people who are currently incarcerated. So the way that we're going around that is really just interviewing formerly incarcerated people, Muslims specifically, interviewing people who work directly with that population. So prison chaplains, people from the John Howard Society, which is a social services organization that serves formerly and currently incarcerated people in Canada. So we're going in a very roundabout way, but we're essentially trying to speak with people about their experiences. One advantage of speaking with people who are formerly incarcerated is that they can speak to their experience while they were in prison. They can also speak to their experience once they were released from prison. So their experience reintegrating into the community, which we're interested in both of those aspects.
The John Howard Society, I'm not sure if I'm right in this, but it's for men, and the Elizabeth Fry Society is for women. Yes. So are you also working with women prisoners?
Yes, we are. So organizations like the John Howard Society, Elizabeth Fry Society, other chaplains who serve other faith communities but are adjacent to the Muslim community. Essentially just any folks who come into contact directly with that population and have a sense of the needs.
What's the main aim of the project?
So the main aim of the project, that's a great question. The main aim of the project is actually to first determine what the needs of Muslim people who are incarcerated, what their prominent needs are, if they're being met, how service providers can better meet their needs, and to point towards existing solutions if they do exist, or to build solutions. So this is a very practical research. We really want to not only identify a problem, but either personally, like through the organization, help build solutions or help point towards solutions that exist and that work really well in community.
My sense is that this is very cutting edge research. I converted to Canada. I converted to Islam in 1994, and that was in Kingston, Ontario, where, as you know, there are many prisons. Many prisons are located there. The local Muslim community was quite active in prison visits, and I knew people who were involved in that. So when I converted, I had a very, very tiny little interest, and I remember one volunteer prison chaplain whose name was Ibrahim Downey was trying to recruit people to go and visit the prisons. He seemed to be having a really, really hard time getting people. I apologize, I didn't get involved either. I had my fears. How is the Muslim community reacting, and do you sense that this is cutting edge research?
So I do think the research it's very novel. There is not much data or literature to rely on for this content in the Canadian context. What's very interesting, though, is that this information exists really strongly in places like the UK and the US, where the Muslim communities have a longer standing relationship with the country. I feel like relatively in Canada, the Muslim community is comparatively a bit newer. And so with that comes kind of a lack of, empirical information around issues like this, but there's ways that you can leverage information from other countries and also just embark on new research. So it is quite novel. In terms of your other question about how the Muslim community is reacting, so it's hard to speak en masse for the community generally, but what we're finding is that there is a very prevalent stigma towards people who are incarcerated and formerly incarcerated in our community. And through our research also, it's very rare that we speak with someone who feels a connection to the larger Muslim community. So very often people say that, it really was just their families or people working directly with them that they felt supported by, and that there wasn't necessarily a very strong connection with the community. So one of the aims of this project also is to help with public education around our correctional system. So when we think about our community generally and the public, the general public, our correctional systems are very closed off. But they're also accountable to the public. And so I think a really important piece of this work is that we need to help people understand how our correctional systems work, and then also try to help to humanize and destigmatize people who come into contact with the justice system.
I remember under the Harper, when he was Prime Minister, there was a big upheaval in prison chaplaincy. And people who I knew who had been employed part-time as prison chaplains lost their jobs. Can you tell us a little bit about that, what's happened since then?
Yes. So in 2013, prison chaplaincy services switched to a more privatized model. It used to be that so let's say, for example, a Muslim prison chaplain would be employed by their faith community. And the faith community would have a contract with Correctional Services Canada in order to provide that service. So essentially, you'd be working for your community, you'd be hired, trained, and there would be oversight from your religious community. So currently, as of 2013, in an effort to reduce costs, prison chaplaincy services were privatized to a single company. And so now there's a single company that provides that service. They're based in the East End of Canada. They do have evangelical roots, and they're responsible for administering, providing, training, overseeing prison chaplains en masse across Canada. And there have been some logistical changes in the work of chaplains as a result of that have at times been a disservice to the accessibility of quality care for folks.
When you say privatized to a single company, do you happen to know if that company is hiring Muslim prison chaplains, or are they expecting a Christian to do ministry to Muslims in prison?
They're definitely hiring Muslim chaplains. So they are hiring and training and overseeing Muslim chaplains to do the work. There are times where there is a leaning towards interfaith chaplaincy, which is essentially a chaplain of another faith offering services to multiple faith groups.
Now, you mentioned that you're going to be interviewing people who are coming out. You'll be able to ask them, what do they need now and what do they need then? So do you have any sense, based on what you've done so far, about what let's say, maybe two pressing needs of the Muslims in prison?
Sure. So while they're currently incarcerated?
Yes.
Okay. So two pressing needs that have come up are access to chaplains or counselors more regularly while they're incarcerated. And then there are things as simple as, so while you're in prison, something as simple as being able to tell time is not always guaranteed. And so having access to a clock, for example, or having access to some effective means of telling time. And it's something that you wouldn't think about, but something that's really important in our religious practice when we think about praying our dawn prayers and when we think about breaking our fast at an appropriate time. And so for folks who are practicing in the prison, they're very much subject to the kindness or lack thereof of correctional guards and other people to wake them up at certain times to pray or to offer them their food at certain times. So I would say one is generally just access to programming. And I think that's consistent even outside of the Muslim community, is that folks are looking for more regular and consistent programming while they're incarcerated. And then some logistical needs, like being able to tell time. Something as simple as that. It's a really specific example, and it's wider than that specific issue, but I feel like that's a very it paints a picture.
It sure does. I mean, if you're relying on the kindness of a guard, we hear stories from time to time of guards not being very kind at all, in fact, being overtly racist and even smearing Qurans or deliberately not letting them fast. So obviously there needs to be some kind of policy around that. Are you also going to be doing advocacy work on policy?
Yes. So there's 3 streams of the project that we're doing. We want to conduct the original qualitative research to kind of have a data and a base to speak to these issues. We are looking to do public education, as I mentioned, but a third and really important piece is that we're looking to do policy advocacy. So we're looking to advocate for some structural changes in how faith-based services and prison chaplaincy are administered in correctional settings.
Well, we can't do much in a short interview like this. We've just scratched the surface, but we wish you well on your research, and hopefully you'll come up with some useful things that will help Muslims as they go into prison and as they come out. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
That's it from us. You've been watching Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Stay tuned for the next episode. Stay safe and God bless.